In the summer of 1588, 130 Spanish ships cut through the waters of the English Channel in a vast crescent formation, 7 miles wide. They were the largest fleet Europe had ever seen. The Invincible Armada, sent by King Philip II of Spain to crush Protestant England and overthrow Queen Elizabeth. But within weeks, this mighty fleet would be shattered, not by English cannon fire alone, but by a single, catastrophic command decision made by one man on one sleepless night, anchored off the coast of Calais. The roots of this conflict ran deep. For decades, Catholic Spain and Protestant England had been locked in a cold war of religion, piracy, and dynastic rivalry. English privateers like Sir Francis Drake had raided Spanish treasure fleets and burned ships in the port of Cadiz, an insult Philip II could no longer endure. In 1587, the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, a Catholic rival to Elizabeth's throne, removed the last obstacle to invasion. Philip resolved to assemble an armada to carry 30,000 soldiers across the Channel, link up with the Duke of Parma's veteran army in Flanders, and march on London. The command fell not to a seasoned admiral, but to a reluctant nobleman, the Duke of Medina Sidonia, who had never led a fleet in battle. The Armada set sail from Lisbon on May 28, 1588, bearing 130 ships, 8,000 sailors, and 19,000 soldiers. Almost immediately, disaster struck. A fierce Atlantic storm scattered the fleet, forcing it to limp into the port of La Coruña for repairs. It took a month to regroup, a month that consumed precious provisions and gave the English time to prepare. When the Armada finally entered the Channel in late July, it adopted a defensive crescent formation, a floating fortress almost impossible to break. English ships under Lord Howard of Effingham and Sir Francis Drake harried the Spanish flanks, faster and more maneuverable, but their cannon fire did little real damage. The crescent held. After days of running skirmishes up the Channel, Medina Sidonia made the fateful decision to anchor his exhausted fleet off the coast of Calais on August 6. He expected the Duke of Parma's invasion barges to arrive within hours. They never came. The anchorage at Calais was a trap, but not the one Medina Sidonia had imagined. The Spanish fleet sat motionless, clustered together in tight formation, its greatest strength, disciplined crescent tactics, now rendered useless by the need to wait. Parma's army, 27,000 men strong, was blockaded in the shallow ports of Dunkirk and Newport by Dutch rebel ships. His flat-bottomed invasion barges could not reach deep-water Spanish vessels without being torn apart. Worse, Medina Sidonia had no way to communicate with Parma quickly. The shallow Flemish coast made it impossible for his deep-draft galleons to approach. The English commanders saw their moment. On the night of August 7th, they prepared 8 old ships, packed them with pitch, gunpowder, and tar, set them ablaze, and sent them drifting toward the anchored Spanish fleet on a midnight tide. What happened in the next 6 hours would seal the fate of the Spanish Empire. As the burning hulks drifted closer, panic consumed the Spanish anchorage. The fireships themselves did little physical damage, but psychological terror was absolute. Spanish sailors had heard rumors of hell burners, floating bombs packed with gunpowder capable of vaporizing entire ships. Medina Sidonia gave the order to cut anchor cables and scatter. In the chaos of darkness, with wind and current driving them, the disciplined crescent shattered into fragments. At dawn on August 8th, the Spanish fleet was strung out across miles of open water off gravelines. Isolated, disorganized, and vulnerable. Here came the true command failure. Medina Sidonia could have attempted to regroup and retreat south, back the way they came, through the Channel. Instead, with English ships closing in and the wind blowing from the southwest, he made the most consequential choice of the campaign: to order the fleet north, around the entire coast of Scotland and Ireland, a route for which they had no charts, no supplies, and no hope. The Battle of Gravelines that followed was brutal, but not decisive in itself. English guns pounded the Spanish hulls for 8 hours, expending ammunition at an astonishing rate, yet sinking only a handful of ships. The real catastrophe lay ahead. As the battered Armada limped north into the North Sea, it entered a world for which it was utterly unprepared. Autumn storms lashed the coasts of Scotland and Ireland with unprecedented fury. Ships were driven onto rocks, shattered against cliffs, swallowed by the Atlantic. Crews that made it ashore found no refuge. English authorities in Ireland executed every Spanish survivor they captured. Starvation, thirst, and disease finished what the sea began. Of the 130 ships that had set out from Lisbon, only 67 limped home to Spain. More than 20,000 Spanish sailors and soldiers perished. The invincible Armada had been destroyed not by superior English seamanship alone, but by one man's decision to take the long way home. Philip II, on hearing the news, declared, "I sent my ships to fight men, not the winds and waves." But the winds merely finished what a flawed command decision had set in motion. History remembers the Spanish Armada as a tale of English triumph and divine winds. But the truth is far more sobering. It is a story about the weight of command, about how one decision under pressure can alter the fate of empires. Medina Sidonia was not a coward or a fool. He was a man placed in an impossible position, and in the critical moment, he chose the wrong path. If you believe history's lessons lie in human choices, not just broad forces, subscribe to this channel. Comment below. What was the single biggest factor in the Armada's defeat? The weather, the English Navy, or the decisions of one man?